story.
I know.
This is the Ring of Honor, a.k.a. Shane T, boy, the baddest champion you ever seen, boy.
This is Mr. Anderson.
This is good old JR Jim Ross, and you are listening.
You're listening to Knockouts and 3 Counts.
Cover! We got a new world champion!
That might be one of the craziest knockouts I've ever seen in my life.
Knockouts and 3 Counts is the podcast, baby! It's the real deal, baby!
Knockouts and 3 Counts starts now.
Ooh, what up, no? It's a Thursday. We're on a little bit later than 9 o'clock, but hey, as you can see, your boy cleaned up a little bit tonight. We had to deal with some wedding duties. That's why Corey's not with me. But as you can see on the other end of the screen, we've got a lot to talk about. And mainly, and first and foremost, we're talking about Pale Pro, which is going down on Friday. It's going down on Title Match Network. You got a big card. It's going to be headlined by our boy Sam Adonis versus Jeff Cobb. You got Mike Bennett versus Chandler Hopkins. You've got a hell of a card, and we've got the man behind the madness, Mr. Kyle Hessler, on with us. How you doing, brother, man?
What's up, Kyle? How you doing, man?
Hey, man, it's the tale of two Kyles, man. Go ahead and throw your social media out and let everybody know where they can find Pale Pro, where they can watch Pale Pro, all that good stuff.
Twitter's where I'm most active, at Pale Pro Wrestling with no G at the end. Wrestling. That's the easiest way to follow what we're doing. If you want like more ticket information, schedule, all that stuff, palepro.com. And then also we're on Facebook and Instagram and stuff, but those are the two easiest ways to track us. So, and it's Pale Pro, but can't do the little umlau on that. So I just say Pale Pro.
I hear you, but I mean, like I said, man, I wish I could be there in Texas. I've been there at the first couple shows. I ain't going to be able to make it for this one. I'm kind of bummed, but like I said, I got some wedding duties, man. I even pulled out the fancy Movado watch for tonight. See, we was trying to get crispy out here, although, I mean, it took us 2 hours to get food, but hey, that's another story for another time. But like I said, you've got a big weekend this weekend with Pale Pro. First of all, how are you feeling going into this third show? And is there any less nerves now that you're a few shows in versus, your opening show?
That first one, that first one was just really a lot of feeling out. We did the Indie Expo, the first one. I was in and that was a 2-day, 3-show card. That was just, it was just so foreign. Like every experience was foreign. And like, I almost fainted the first night. It's just, no, seriously, like that's a whole nother, well, until the short version of it. So
I was going to say, man, that's what we're here for, is story time, fool. What happened?
So we're setting up to do the Indie Expo, the first one, and we don't really know what to expect. It's in the middle of a pandemic. It's the first time we're running a show. Be all this different stuff. And I was just concerned because I was like, well, we booked the building that MLW runs. So we were thinking like, if we filled up like 500,000, that'd be great. And we got like 100, 150. But it was like one of those things where I was walking towards the ring and I was just like, oh gosh, what did I get myself into? And whenever we had real ropes on this ring, and most people don't use real ropes outside the WWE, and one of them snapped. So we had a 2-rope ring, and I was like, I fell over, and I think it was Madman Fulton that caught me, because I was like, what else could go wrong at this point? After that, it was all smooth sailing. But it was like, that was like, literally, it was like, wow, what more could happen? But yeah, since then, it's just been learning curves. I mean, you and me have seen each other at Warrior. Shout outs to Steve and Eric, kind Definitely. Of my internship up there. That's just an opportunity to learn. So I've tried to go to as many indie shows between when I'm running so I can learn from people. And, the first one we did in January was a Thursday night, so it was a little weird, but it went over pretty well. And then that second one was only a month later, and that went great. That one was the best thing I've done so far. But I think the big thing with this next one, as far as my nerves goes, is just making sure people remember us. And I think front. And then the second thing is it's just a new venue. So, venues are always kind of the main thing because we don't have like an event staff like AEW or MLW or any of these other big promotions have. It's really just me and then just my production staff, my ring crew, and then just, any students that I can get to help out or whatever. But, ultimately it's like a hired staff.
Yep. There you go. You're good. It went out for a second. You're good.
No, I'm feeling pretty good as far as all that goes. I mean, it's a pretty stacked card. And, like one thing I've learned as a promoter is I need to make the canvas ready. Basically, I think of it as like I'm just helping the artists do their make it simple.
Your audio keeps going in and out. Yeah. Oh, you're quiet again. Can't hear you. Uh-oh. Let me see.
What about now?
Now I hear you a little bit. Yeah, now I hear you.
All right, good deal. So what I was saying was just what I've kind of learned, and I'm very novice at this, so I say this with humility, just how I look at it. Is if I look at getting the venue ready, the security, all the little stuff that needs to get done. That's all just setting up the canvas for the wrestlers to paint their picture, the artists to make their masterpiece. Masterpiece. It's an indie show, but you know what I mean. Like, but I feel like that's my responsibility is really just to kind of help the artists set up so that they can make the best art possible. So,
and I mean, to your credit, man, I mean, we talked last week with Mike Bennett about his first time at Pale Pro Wrestling when we all got stuck in the snow. But like I said, I mean, dude, you guys have had, a cool setup. I mean, you guys running in the brewery. I know you're not running the brewery this time, but like I said, I mean, you guys had a different feel off the rip. Plus you guys were dealing with, running shows, during the pandemic. Granted, by the time the second one came down, most of Texas kind of had opened back up to a degree. But like still, I mean, running those shows in a pandemic when you don't know what the certainty of your house is going to be, what the certainty of people going to be buying tickets is going to be. I mean, that definitely not only presents an issue for somebody who's a seasoned promoter, but I mean, you guys are in your first couple shows, which, in reference to what you had said earlier, I think that's very smart on your part that you're hitting these other shows to kind of get a vibe on, what you want, to come out of your show, and like I said, in your first two shows, you've got our buddy Sam Adonis is your Pele Pro champion, which, he's doing his thing over with NWA, doing his thing at When Our Shadows Fall and all those good things. I mean, you got other past guests of the show like Mecha Wolf come through on the last one. I mean, you're bringing in good names, and just on the name value alone, you're attracting eyes. And I feel like the action you guys have put in the ring has been, has been the most exciting part of it, which a lot of times with indies, they try to find their niche. I heard you say in the Mike Bennett documentary that you like yours to be like ROH, but not ECW. Yeah. Tell me about that. So
I'll let me just say real quickly. So that part of that documentary, I kind of wish wasn't released because
I know. I just mean as far as the style you guys got in the ring.
But like if I had it my way, I think doing a little bit of everything can get a little out of hand. So like, for example, I've been watching a lot of old MLW, like not that I dislike the new product. I actually think the new product's fantastic, but I was watching like MLW Underground after ECW went off the air. Okay. And the one thing I really like about what they do that I think Ring of Honor also did just a little differently was like MLW had, they highlight in their opening package American strong style, Japanese style, lucha, hardcore. Like they hit every tier. Now, I don't personally want to hit every tier like that, but I think early Ring of Honor, that like that East Coast wrestling that was going on at the time, I'm not a huge fan of ZZW, but you could even throw out some of the stuff they were doing, and they had a lot of talented guys at the time too. I like the vibe of treating wrestling like sport and treating stuff like it has different divisions. And so my comment about ROH, not ECW, is it's kind of a disservice because I actually really like ECW. My point was more, I think there's a family-friendly vibe that Ring of Honor had for a while that I think we could have. Like, I like my shows. I don't like calling them family-friendly because I think that implies like a G-rated kind of program. I kind of think of my shows as like PG-13, like high-octane action, good storytelling, kind of like Lord of the Rings. Not that my shows are anything like the Lord of the Rings, but I just mean like the Lord of the Rings is a kind of like I would show my kid Lord of the Rings at a pretty early age or read him the books. And even though there's some conflict and some like tricky adult stuff going on, it's stuff that can be explained. So I like my shows to kind of be like that because I think I've listened to enough writers and stuff that if you make you make something good for kids, it should also be good for adults. So that's kind of my thinking, and that's kind of where that comment comes from. And that's the kind of show we kind of want to be, if that makes sense.
Well, I mean, dude, you like I said, I think that that's a smart approach because, I think that's one of the things that's really hindering WWE right now in that they, again, a much bigger scale. I understand they're a global company, but what I'm getting at is they have become so geared towards, okay, well, we know we're going to be the lock on casual viewers or, the kid demographic, and they make so much money off of merch with that they're missing what I think brings a lot of the essence to pro wrestling in that the story of it and why do I want to see these guys fight and what happened between them that, you know what I mean? Like, there be give me a reason to want to see them fight.
I would also say, like, you and me have talked. I mean, we talk on the phone every once in a while. So,
right.
We've had our own mini podcast, but I'll just say this parenthetically. I've in the last year, I used to consider myself, in hindsight, kind of a wrestling snob. Only watch the WWE, then only watch Ring of Honor, then only watch New Japan, then only watch AEW. And now, like, that I've been, experienced the indies, like, I really like the indies more than anything. Live shows, at least. But what I will say is, one thing I think the WWE and maybe some other companies are doing a disservice is, I seem to recall when you were a kid, the WWE didn't really account for this, but basically, you'd be a wrestling fan, not a WWE fan. Now, obviously, there was the WWF versus WCW, but I think that, like, there was some shift that happened within the last few decades, and I think this crosses other lines, like branding wise, that people feel like they got to be with their brand, they got to be with their grouping, rather than be with
just being a fan of wrestling.
Yeah, and I mean, like, I think this crosses.
You saw that a lot with the Wednesday Night Wars, like when they had both of them on Wednesday night. And the sad part of it is, again, we talked about this a lot on our episode with Dave LaGreca. Here's the thing, man. Like, I feel like wrestling fans are missing the point in some ways because, like, I think all promoters, whether we're talking about WWE, whether we're talking about AEW, whatever we're talking about, I think they all want loyal fan bases, but you don't have to be loyal fan bases at the cost of, well, I like AEW, so fuck WWE. I like, Ring of Honor, so you know what I mean? Like, ultimately, we're in a boom period for wrestling, if you really think about it, because when else can you remember when there was wrestling on TV 7 days a week? And that's not even including all the stuff that you see on IWTV. You got, a million different streaming services for all the indie stuff. I mean, you got Fight TV. I mean, literally, there's a million different places.
And I mean, I think there's, again, let's not get too philosophical, but I will just say, like, circling back to what Pale Pro is doing, I will say, okay, so let me separate Kyle, the wrestling fan, from Kyle, the promoter. So Kyle, the promoter, is not representing what we just talked about, because Kyle, the promoter, has said in, like, business meetings and sponsorship things that, like, we're trying to attract new audiences. So I have a lot of people that come to my shows that have never watched wrestling before. I think you experienced this with some friends I introduced you to. They never watched wrestling before, or if they did, it was like forever ago, and they wouldn't even consider themselves wrestling fans. They just kind of watched it once or twice. But they won't go to WWE. They'll come to my stuff. Now, I, as the promoter, love that. I want that because I don't have to worry about competition. But that's me as the promoter, as the businessman, as the fan. You know, I don't want people, whether it's indie shows or big shows, I don't want people cannibalizing themselves. I would love it if people could go to AEW and then come to my show. You know, hopefully there's enough money to go around. But ultimately, like what we're talking about is, I want people to become wrestling fans again. I don't want them to be sucked into these tribal tribes. I mean, that's kind of how it goes. So, you know, I do want, as the promoter, I kind of do want that. But if I'm being honest, I don't want to hogtie people into thinking my show's the only game in town. You know,
you want everybody to eat, man.
Yeah, and I mean, and this goes well for, you know, other promoters and other wrestlers and all that different stuff. I mean, there's enough, like you said, it's a boom period. So like right now, I'm just an indie show, but there's plenty of talent in Texas to kind of have my base. And then there's enough guys, and travel's really easy right now. So it's not that hard to pluck guys from the East Coast. I mean, Sam Adonis, our champion's not even Texan. So, I mean.
Well, I mean, you've already plucked a couple guys now from out here in Michigan. I mean, on this card, you know, you've got Travis Titan, who's a past guest of the show. You know, you got Isaiah Broner was out at the last show. That's another guy that's local to us here. I mean, you're bringing in guys you know, guys from all over the place. And Sam, you know, in reference to what you said about the vibe that you want for your show, I think that's a great way to go about it, because ironically, when I met Sam, it was at a show called Ooh La La Lucha here in Detroit. It had everything from obviously Lucha Libre and all that, but you had burlesque dancers, you had mariachi band, you had all kinds of stuff. And you had people that were going there for no other reason other than they were looking for something to do on Cinco de Mayo. Now, if you can bring those kind of people in and be able to just entertain them with what you got, and by you having such a diverse, you know, lineup of what you're bringing in, I think that you've got a good chance to bringing that in. That brings up another question, though. So, you know, as you expand Pele Pro, do you see yourself bringing in more female talent?
Probably not. Now, I would say, I haven't made an official statement, so you're kind of getting my non-thought out version of it. But I will say, basically, my thought process on female wrestling is we've tried to book it, and it's fallen through. And I just, that was on our February and January cards. We just had stuff fall through. And so between February and now, Mission Pro has just dominated the market. So I've kind of taken, this is not my, this is one of the things I've thought about, is I just don't want to be second rate. And so I've kind of decided not to avoid that. I will be honest, like there's a longer conversation with that, and the state of kind of how the world is right now. I want to be very careful how I phrase stuff and all that. So that's probably a separate conversation. But as it is right now, we're probably not going to be doing any women's wrestling. Certainly not for the rest of the year, because I'm pretty fully booked. But I don't know what our future holds on that front. So I just want to encourage Mission Pro. The Indie Expo does some women's tournaments, and I'm part of that. My personal belief with Pele Pro is just, it's not the direction we want to go right now. But it's kind of similarly, I don't really think about doing like deathmatch wrestling. Like that's not a thing. I've also kind of thought about, like, do we want to even try tag team wrestling? So when it comes to these different things, they're niche. You know, not all things are the same. You know, if they were, everyone go to every wrestling show, right? So, you know, why do people that are AEW fans not go to every WWE show? Well, because they're not the same thing, right? So I might not be doing women's wrestling, but that doesn't mean I think it's bad or whatever.
No,
It's
man.
just,
No, not at all. And that's not even at
Yeah.
all what I was trying to imply either. I just, like I say, I mean, you're saying in the evolution of Pele Pro and different things you want to see.
Right.
I'm just throwing out what we could see in the future. I mean, like I said, I mean, this card that you've got coming this Saturday, I mean, you've got a hell of a card. I mean, you've really covered all bases. I mean, you got guys from Japan, you got guys like Sam who are doing their thing in AAA. You know, you got guys from Impact and Jake something. I mean, you got guys from Ring of Honor like Mike Bennett, which, like I mentioned, you can check out. Whoa, we lost Kyle for a minute. He'll be back in there in 1 second. Give me a second, guys. 1 second. Oh boy, he cut out on me. Just give me 1 second. I'm just getting him back in there. Oh, there he comes. There he goes. All right, I got you back.
You think I know how to operate this thing at this point, but I don't. Sorry.
Look, man, we are coming out of a pandemic. I think this is all new for everybody else. I have the luxury of doing this twice a week, every week, and so I kind of got the hang of things. As you can see, I've had to adapt and basically built my own like in-house studio over here. So yeah, man. But like I said, I just was talking towards the evolution of what you see for Pele Pro. Like I say, because with this card you've got this weekend, you have. I mean, you've really covered all bases. I mean, like I said, you've got guys from Ring of Honor, New Japan, Impact, and then Mexico as well. So, I mean, let's talk a little bit more about what we've got going on this Saturday.
Or did you want to talk about what we're thinking about in the future?
I mean, I'd love to hear both. So whatever you got for that as well, the floor is yours, sir.
I think this card is, I think the last two cards are pretty representational of what I wanted us to look like. A good mix of talent that you normally wouldn't see mixed up. So I really like the idea of, Sam Adonis is now AAA and NWA, at least for the time being. But so when are you going to see a New Japan guy take on an NWA guy? Now I know the open door thing's happening, but this is more for the indies. So it's a very different kind of feel. That's something I really like. And so back to our February card, we did Psycho Clown versus Sam Adonis. Well, that was at the time CMLL versus AAA. That never happens. So that was pretty cool. And I really appreciate that we got to put on that kind of matchup. That's kind of what I'd like to be in the future. But I'm also open to like what sticks. I have things, kind of like what we were just talking about, like hardcore wrestling or whatever. There's certain things I'm just not interested in promoting. And there's plenty of people that do it better than me. So I encourage them to go, to those sources. But I'm trying to figure out what sticks within what I think ideal wrestling looks like. And, back to what we were talking about when we first got on, I really have been studying like old MLW and, Ring of Honor is kind of like my bread and butter. So if we had something that looked like that, that would be pretty cool. So I've thought about some different divisions, but not like some off the wall stuff. So I've definitely been thinking about, I was very impressed with Warriors Lucha title. I thought that was really cool and really clever. Wouldn't lie if I had thought of it, had an idea to do something like that, but I not claiming anything or anything. I just think that's a great idea, and I'm glad they executed that so well with that awesome War of Attrition match. But something like that, something maybe like a cruiserweight title. I'm big on when titles and divisions, they have to make sense. So, like if I do,
I agree completely.
So like if I do a Texas title, I want to make it a Texas division. You can't, like my Pele Pro title it's just our main championship. It can be won by anybody, it can be defended by anybody. But if we did something like a Texas title, I'd want it only by Texas talent, within the state, whatever it is. So
I think that's a great idea too, because I mean, that'll put more spotlight back, spotlight back to you guys. Now that brings up another good question. Something that, I've heard a lot on not only our podcast from guys and girls that have come on with us, but also on like Busted Open and things like that. You mentioned the vibe that you want for Pele Pro. As we come out of this pandemic and things really ramp back up to, back to whatever this new normal is going to be. I mean, I know Texas is already kind of ahead of the curve on that, but how important is the vibe of the crowd for Pele Pro as you go through these crowds? Because I feel like a lot of what we're seeing with some of these crowds is like, and it's surprising too, because you would think that with all the time we've had away from being able to watch shows in person, that people would just be chomping at the bit. But as we saw on Sunday with NXT TakeOver in Your House, badass card, but that crowd just wasn't. They just weren't hype. And so I guess my question is, how important do you think that is on the indie scene as we come out of the pandemic for crowds?
Well, so real quick, I just want to ask the question. Where did they do that NXT show?
Capital Wrestling Center. They've been running there pretty much for a bit. I think they said July is when they're about to go back on the road, but I know AEW just announced they're going to do the stadium where the tennis Arthur Ashe thing in Queens.
Well, no, the only thing I was going to say was I do wonder if like Florida markets and markets where they've been running consistently are a little burnt out. Just a thought. Okay. But as far as crowd hype energy, I mean, nothing would make me more happy to have a big crowd for this upcoming show that's lively. I've got a couple things for the crowd. Like we've got some posters that people can make. We're going to have some signage and some different things just to keep some buzz there, to keep it entertaining. But I would say just like big picture wise, that I think as far as importance of crowd hype and energy to indie crowds, I can only speak for me, but I can tell you, again, part of my philosophy is I'd like to get people that are non-traditional wrestling fans to give my show a try. And if that's the case, I think it's a little bit easier to work with people because you can get a little bit more traditional heel and faces. So like the first match of the first card we put on was a three-way between Fuego del Sol, Chandler Hopkins, and Niles Plunkett. Well, Niles does a wine gimmick. It's great because he actually owns.
He's entertaining as shit too, man.
He's really great.
I caught the whole drinking contest between him and Malco at the last one.
Oh my gosh, that was great too. But like, here's my thing with him. Look, let me put Niles over for a second because this is a guy that never gets any credit. So hopefully you can hear this. Niles is just a fantastic guy to work with. He's super professional, all that stuff. But here's the thing. When I met him, I knew I was going to be running a brewery. I said, Niles, I want to work with you so badly because I've got this brewery show and you're the perfect heel for it. Now, what happens? He comes out.
He is.
Yeah, right. He comes out, and he's a good heel as it is. Like, do not get me wrong, but it was just one of those natural things that when he comes out, he's got this like classic music vibe. He interrupts Chandler, so again, people that have never watched wrestling or haven't watched in a long time, they see Chandler Hopkins come out, and he's high-fiving the crowd. Oh yeah, we cheer this guy. This is a good guy. We cheer this guy. And then he's doing a promo, and everyone's getting excited and listening to what he has to say. And then boom, he gets cut off mid-promo, and this guy comes out swirling wine, just acting arrogant. It's like that was perfect. And my point with that, as far as energy goes, for me, it was really critical that first match hit. And so this upcoming show, we're going to start with Chandler and Mike Bennett because I think two things. One, I think we're going to have our biggest crowd. So we're going to have a lot of people that have either not been to wrestling shows in a long time again, or it's their first post-pandemic show, or they're regular wrestling fans and they're just trying stuff out. But ultimately, I decided I want my show stealer to be the first match. I don't think it's necessarily going to be the best match, but I think it's going to steal the show. I think it's going to be something that people remember throughout the night. And so the crowd energy needs to be dynamic for that. And so I hope that kind of makes sense. My point roundaboutly is that post this new world, I think it's going to be really important for
that. You got to start it off high. You got to get people invested off the rip. Well, I got something that goes right off of that. I mean, again, this kind of goes into what I was talking about again with, making someone want to see somebody fight. And fortunately, you've got guys like Chandler Hopkins who are kind of, doing the legwork for you. When you look at the promo that he put out, prior to this match, talking about the story between him and Mike Bennett and the relationship between Mike Bennett. And it was cool because he put that out right before I was able to bring Mike Bennett on. And Mike Bennett went on to tell, and he went on to tell us, like he had completely forgotten about that. But then when Chandler brought that up, how big of a deal that is. And it really had brought things full circle for Mike Bennett to be now facing a guy who, came looking up to you. And now you guys are going to square off in the ring. So for you, I mean, what does that do for you as a promoter when you got guys that are bringing intrigue to your show and your matches, all on their own? Because I feel like that's one thing that I would think is harder for indie shows is to build the interest in them, because a lot of times they're one-off matches, or if you're not like a weekly quote unquote territory where you're running every week or at least a couple times a month, you know what I mean, it's hard to like build stories and things like that. So what for you does the extra little ingredients for this match bring to it?
Well, this match specifically, I mean, I wish I had the ability to show everybody in the audience that like make a really good promo. And I mean, that's where the production side comes in. I'll go off Paul Heyman on this. If you can't do good production, screw it. Do best matches. You highlight the positives, or you highlight
the negatives.
Yeah, exactly. So
I know the saying.
Yeah, but I'll probably have Chandler. Maybe he'll cut a promo to start the show or something like that. I don't know. But as far as what that does for the show, like I said, I wish everybody could see it because it adds that extra drama. But it's the drama I want. I don't like artificial drama. I like real stuff. And, obviously in wrestling, we're kind of going like this. But in this specific situation, it was a real thing. That was a real incident that happened. And, my personal thoughts is I think it makes this match really important for Chandler, win, lose, or draw. And I think that's what people care about versus just like, hey, I'm bad guy such and such, and I'm bad guy such and such, or I'm super indie guy, and I'm other super indie guy. Like, people need a reason to be invested in matches. And I think what a lot of times what happens is, and I've done it too, like, don't get me wrong, you just bring in a guy because nobody's seen him before. Well, that doesn't make an investment. That makes a purchase. And I want people to be invested, if that makes sense. So.
Well, from what I saw in your first two shows, man, everybody that was there really seemed raring and ready to come back. A guy that you've had on the first couple shows, I got to talk to him a couple times now and have really enjoyed what I've seen. And especially after kind of seeing, what he had to say on that Mike Bennett documentary, as he was Mike Bennett's opponent on the last show. You've got Cam Cole versus a past guest of our show and Jake Something. To me, this is one of the more intriguing matches on this card because you've got a young guy in Cam Cole who really has been kind of really putting himself in there, not only being the Reality of Wrestling champion, but he's been making his way to AEW the last couple weeks as well. So tell me a little bit about that match. And I mean, I would imagine for most indie fans, they know who Jake Something is. And if you don't, you're going to know something come Saturday, because I can tell you from personal experience, the man is hard hitting, and it's like he says, I mean, it's something. So make sure you check it out. Title Match Network. But tell me a little bit about this match and why this was a matchup you wanted to put together.
Well, so I want matches that make sense. And so I know that right now Cam Cole is dominating the Texas scene. Like, he's got the Reality Wrestling title, which I think is probably the oldest Texas title, maybe. But it's certainly a prestigious one. And he's also collecting some other belts in the area too. Well, Jake Something's Black Label Pro champion. He's AWA. He's a couple.
AEW champ, yeah.
Yeah. He's got a couple championships. So I think it's a good championship kind of pedigree matchup. But it's also just like, I mean, you can forget all that. I just want to see this. And Jake Something's a guy that works Texas. I've used him before in the Indie Expo, and then he just worked Austin not all that long ago. So, like, he's not an unknown commodity to Texas. So he's got a reputation here. And my thought is, A guy like that needs to be taken. If he can win a Texas title, well, then he's going to stay here longer. He's going to work here more. And so it's just a good matchup. And I think Cam Cole I'm glad he's getting some shots at like dark and stuff like that, because there's a lot of high quality prospects I work with. But I will just say, I genuinely think Cam Cole has one of the brightest futures of anyone I've worked with. The guy can get a room furious at him doing different things. He doesn't got a shtick. He's got that. I don't want to compare him to MJF because they're very different, but he's got that same kind of off the cuff, I can make somebody get mad at me. Kind of like a good comedian that can work off a crowd.
He's a perfect heel, man. It's like, what you hear about a good heel, man, is a guy who makes people want to pay to see him get his ass whooped.
Yeah.
That's,
and
I mean, that's about as cut and dry as you can put it. Go ahead.
I'll just say, like, that's another reason I booked Jake Something for this. Is Jake Something is a guy where if he wins, he's going to be brutalizing Cam Cole, and I think people want to see that. So I'll just leave it at that. I'm super excited for this match. Can't believe I'm very fortunate I get to book it. I'll put it that way.
I mean, we've covered two of the big matches. We talked a little bit about Cobb versus Sam Adonis, but I mean, let's talk a little, since we're talking about clashing of styles. I mean, you can't really get too much more of a clashing of style in this one. Sam, even though he's 6'4", 230 pounds, I mean, as you saw at NWA when Our Shadows Fall, the man can fly and work lucha libre all while chain wrestling, and you talk about chain wrestling. I mean, dude, he's stepping in there with Jeff Cobb, who can throw you 10 ways to Sunday, and you aren't going to know which way is up by the time he does it. So for me, this would be the match I'm most looking forward to. I mean, maybe we have a little bit of bias in this one, but hey, I'm allowed to do that. It's my fucking show. So anyways, what are your thoughts on this match?
Well, I mean, I was really hopeful that when Sam became our champion, that we could do whatever it took to make our champion look prestigious. And so we wanted to do the right kind of matchups. Certainly there's guys in Texas that as we build up our brand, I want to challenge for that title. But for the time being, I want to bring in the best that's available. And Jeff Cobb was somebody I've been around a couple times. We tried to book last year, just the pandemic and stuff like that got in the way. But I really wanted to get him back here. And so with everything that he's got going on in New Japan, we're very lucky that he's going to be in the States for this matchup. But it's a matchup that just, like you said, it's a clash of styles. So at first you might be like, oh, that doesn't make any sense. But the first time, I'm trying to remember if I don't think it was the first time I saw Jeff Cobb, because I'm pretty sure I saw him in Ring of Honor a couple times. But one of the times I saw him live was in Madison Square Garden against Will Ospreay.
No shit. I was waiting to see what show you were going to say, because I was at that show too.
Yeah, and I mean, so you were there. I was just like, I mean, this guy can work with different styles. And so I think him and Sam are going to have an incredible match. My hope would be that this would be the first great match of the independent scene for the summer. I mean, I can't say that it will. Hype is a lot of it. Social media influences a lot of that. But I hope objectively that by the end of this Saturday night, the buzz is around what Jeff Cobb and Sam Adonis do in that ring, and people feel like that was a genuine money-making kind of match. That was a pay-per-view quality main event kind of match. I'm glad I spent the ticket, or I'm glad I bought it on Title Match or Fight. That's the kind of feel I want, and I think we're going to get it. So, this Saturday, come hell or high water, we're going to have Jeff Cobb and Sam Adonis go toe-to-toe, and I think, like I said, I think it's going to be a high-level matchup. All
right, well, who's going to keep the title?
Well, what do you talk about?
I want to know who your prediction is on it, sir.
It's a shoot, man. It's a shoot.
All right. Well, who are you picking then?
I'm the booker. I can't say that.
Oh, you're no fun, guy. You're no fun.
I'll tell you this. I'll put it this way. I'll say this. Both men are becoming harder and harder to book. And so I'll be happy with either matchup as long as I can get them to both come back, because as both become less and less available, that means there are more and more attention on them. So either one winning, I'm going to be happy with come Saturday. So, hey, before I let you go in a second, I want to have a quick 2-minute about Israel Adesanya, Izzy, because we were talking about this. We were talking about this last week, and I keep coming back to the sensation. How, I mean, it's pretty clear that the UFC has a logjam at heavyweight, middleweight, and light heavyweight now because of the DC Stipe. I mean, there's just so many things that happened that kind of screwed them up.
You also got dominant champions for the most part. That's been a lot of the problem. I mean, Izzy, even though Izzy lost at 205 to Blachowicz, I mean, at this point, I mean, especially after beating Vittori again, I mean, realistically, the only fight that's left that really makes sense for them is the fight that they've already booked, and that's he's going to face Bobby Knuckles again in his next fight, which that's the only real fight left at middleweight that really makes sense. But go ahead and make your point.
But my thought is, okay, so if he hadn't lost to Jan, which I'm now convinced, I've been thinking about this all week, I think that's the worst loss the UFC has had in a long time. I think that's the number one. In hindsight, they're like, crap. You know, if you had told them Izzy would lose that, I think they would have said, well, then we're not booking it. Whereas, like, I think if you told them Nate Diaz was going to upset Conor McGregor and you told them exactly what was going to happen post that, they'd be like, we're still going to do that because they got 2 stars instead of 1. Jan's not a star. Izzy was on a star trajectory. And now, like,
no doubt.
They can't do the Jones fight because even if Jones had wanted to stay around 205 and take that fight, they're going different directions. I was hearing Ariel Helwani talk about this, that I mean, he didn't need to say, I'm just giving him credit, but they went 2 different directions, or seemingly you're going 2 different directions. But all I just wanted to say, I just wanted to grab your opinion briefly, was I feel like Izzy is like, he might be able to overcome it, but I feel like we may have missed our next big UFC MMA superstar, like guy that can draw 80,000, pay-per-view buys like that. I think we may have just lost that guy. My opinion.
I mean, so as far as Izzy being that next star, I mean, I think he's the closest out of the champions they've got right now, right? I think you're definitely right in that out of the champions we've got. Okay, so you've got if you think about it down the line, at heavyweight you've got Ngannou, which I think Ngannou has the potential to do that, but I think it's all going to come down to with him. I think it's going to matter on A, what matchups they give him, and B, how he looks in those. I think the UFC may have missed out on a lot of money by not doing the John Jones fight, because I'll be honest with you, from everything that I keep hearing, it kind of seems like that fight may have set sail. As far as Izzy,
which one?
Jones versus Ngannou.
Yeah, so like Jones has never been like a tremendous draw, but he's obviously been a draw. So like, they've also kind of soiled him to some degree. Like if it were
my
me,
thought is, it comes down to exactly. I hate to say it, giving Jake Paul the credit, but it goes exactly back to what Jake Paul said. This fight's not going to happen because the UFC don't want to pay John Jones, and I may not like John Jones, a lot of John Jones antics, but if we're talking about, pound for pound, we're talking about, best fighter and deserving of getting paid, and take everything else out. Take what he does outside the cage. If we're judging by the performances you put on the cage, people wanting to see you fight, and those kind of things, I think it's undeniable that John Jones deserves to be getting paid more than what he is, because if you look at the payouts for what he got, even compared to like, we'll just say Conor McGregor for now, but you look at what the two got paid, I don't blame him for wanting more money. Here's where I think John Jones fucked up. And it's the same thing that happened now with Izzy, right? So they pulled the trigger for Izzy to go fight at 205. Cool. Here's the difference. Izzy lost that fight, but Izzy still has the 185-pound title. John Jones already gave away his leverage. He was the undisputed king at 205. He could have said, no matter what you want to say at heavyweight, I'm already the king here at 205 because there's nobody left for him to fight other than if they had him fight DC again, and that's not going to happen. So now John Jones is giving away all his bargaining, leverage, bargaining, all that. And now you don't have the title. So the UFC can essentially say, well, fuck you, dude. We don't got to pay you. So I hope Izzy still has that opportunity to do that. But I think that this is another story for, we've hinted at it for you guys coming, but there's going to be an Evolution of MMA series coming to you. And this is something we'll talk about in it. This is another example of that because, okay, so you had Izzy go against Jan Blachowicz. Now I would say that in the UFC, as it sits, there's this culture of, okay, let me conquer my division, and then I want to go up and I want to be the champ like Conor McGregor did. That's all.
But the problem is none of these guys are actually like the thing. Let me just say this, and I gotta go take care of
yes,
the
sir.
nipple. But
yes,
I will say that my disagreement with you on the John Jones thing, the leverage part doesn't. I agree with you, like that he probably did lose that, but I'm less interested in that because the thing with John Jones that I think is really remarkable and different than any long-term UFC champion we've seen. So guys that had 5+ title defenses. The thing that was different about Hopkins was he beat the old guard, or he beat Shogun. Okay, but then he had to kind of go against the contenders that were still there: Rampage, Rashad, Machida, and all these guys. But these guys were older than him. Now, granted, he was still younger, but even if he was like still closer to their age, they were still 30 fights into their career. He was only he was sub 20 fights at that point, right? Well, then he runs into your Gustafsons, your Rumble Johnsons, your those guys, and those guys were like closer his age. Well, the last bit of his title reign was all young guys, younger than him, right? I don't know if that was on
purpose.
Yeah, well, not on purpose, but I'm trying to remember the guy that Dominic Reyes. I imagine Dominic Reyes was younger than him. I'm just assuming that.
Yeah, he is.
Right. So he started to get to the point where he was doing that. That is clearing out your division. When you have been a champion. No
argument.
Izzy didn't do that. Now, I know Izzy beat a lot of the guys on the way up there, kind of like my guy.
I'm just saying he's at the point to it. That was my whole point to why I brought up the Evolution of MMA thing, because in my personal opinion, okay, let's take this back to a wrestling standpoint. In my opinion, the UFC rushed Izzy getting a title shot or getting the second title shot too quick. Let him get a couple more wins at 185 to where people are like, shit, is there anybody at 85 that can beat him? Because I still feel like at 185, there's still a few more fights for Izzy that he can have. Not many, because I will also say that especially after this Vettori win, there's not very many more contenders that they're going to be. But I think if you would have waited a couple more fights and let him, clear out whatever was left at 185, then at least if he steps up and goes and fights that fight at 205, and even if he loses in the same way that he lost to Jan Blachowicz, I think it does less damage to him, because then you still can't argue the fact he's cleared them all out.
The only thing I'll disagree with that is it kills middleweight. It's kind of
but that's what I'm saying. That's the problem with the champ thing in the first place.
Well, so first off, I completely agree with that. I think there's very few exceptions in MMA history where that made sense. But let me quickly just say the one thing to defend Israel, because I think this is you look into this, and we'll talk about it next time. I think one of the things that's already hurting Israel was the fact that all the same kind of guys that he would, like, if you mirrored John Jones's title run with his, I think the one thing that he doesn't have that Jones had was all these star guys. So Machida's in Bellator. Machida would have still been a relatively contender. Jacare Souza's drops dramatically.
I think they released him too. So
yeah, I think you're right. Yehard Mousasi, all the guys that were.
He was a guy I would have loved to have seen more from.
Right. I have a rational love for him, but I'll just say this. I think that's the thing that hurt Israel. We need to talk about this more, but I got to go.
I hear you. But like the man said, there's a lot going down this Saturday. Pele Pro Wrestling. Like I said, Kyle, I appreciate the time. Check it out. Fight TV, Title Match Network. You can check that shit out. You're not going to want to miss this. Jeff Cobb versus Sam Adonis. Like I said, it's going to be a banger of a card. I will be in Texas for the next one. So, like I said, if you're in Texas, man, you got to come check them out.
Awesome, man. You have a great night.
You as well, brother. Later.